This is chapter 35, section 7. The two pieces of reading within this section are The Last Days of Hitler and Japan Dies Hard. We specifically for these notes are going to focus on the last days of Hitler and the war in Europe. We're going to cover in more detail the war in the Pacific with the Japan next week. So starting with that first section, The Last Days of Hitler, we're in December of 1944, so a month after FDR's re-election for a fourth term, and it's become evident that Germany is losing its strength. And so at this point, Adolf Hitler is desperate, and so he's going to throw everything into one last-ditch effort to continue or to get victory, or at least give an opportunity at victory. So this last ditch effort takes place on December 16th, 1944, in an attack on the Ardennes Forest in the along the Belgian-French border. And this becomes known as the Battle of the Bulge. What Hitler's objective is to get a victory in the Ardennes and then to push towards the Belgian port city of Antwerp in hopes of opening up a supply line and then maybe continuing his conquest. However, it's kind of like a Hail Mary, legitimately, like, this is all we can do, so I'm going to try and do it. And so the initial push by Hitler is successful. The Allied lines in this spot are thin. And so Hitler's troops, using all their resources, are able to push through, and they push the Allied troops back. However, within a few days, the Allies, specifically the Americans, are able to get reinforcements sent in, stabilize, and then eventually push the Germans back. And so what this then leads to is the continued drive towards gaining control of Germany. And so we see a couple months later, in March of 1945, American troops reach the Rhine River and find a bridge that leads to the Elbe River by April of 45, and here is where they connect with the Soviet troops. So you have the Eastern and Western fronts connecting, which shows that Germany is now being completely squeezed out. And as the Allies make their way across Europe, they come across the concentration camps. You guys are watching a video this week, at least that's the plan, about America's response to the Holocaust. And so it's important to understand that the United States government and what they knew about the Holocaust is very different than what a ground troop in Europe would know. And so the ground troop in Europe is going to be absolutely clueless to the events of the Holocaust taking place until they all of a sudden start coming across these camps where Nazis had murdered who they claimed to be undesirables, including 6 million people of the Jewish faith. And estimates on the total deaths from the Holocaust vary, but typically the number I've seen is around 11 million people total. There's a HBO show. It's on HBO Max. It's also on Amazon Prime. One specific episode of the show, the show is called Band of Brothers, and it's about 10, 11 episodes about one specific regiment fighting in World War II. But there's one specific episode off the top of my head. I think it's like episode 9, maybe 8. But it is the best portrayal of these troops coming across the concentration camps. And again, they're completely oblivious as to who these people are in these prison camps. And so if you have the opportunity, if you have access to either Prime or HBO, I recommend checking it out, because it puts this into a really, really strong context, and obviously very emotional for both the people who are imprisoned in those camps and then the Allied troops who are marching through Europe and coming across these death camps. So this kind of continues that idea. The Allies didn't know the extent of the Holocaust until the discovery of the concentration camps. And again, governments were aware that something was going on, but the individual ground troops would not be aware of that at all. While this is taking place, there's tragedy back home in the United States. On April 12th, 1945, FDR passes away from a cerebral hemorrhage. And so this is just weeks before Hitler takes his own life. Hitler, I believe, commits suicide on April 30th of 1945. So that seems very unfair that FDR didn't get to see Hitler's life end. And then just a couple weeks after that, Germany surrenders unconditionally. So May 7th is when Germany's unconditional surrender takes place, and May 8th is officially proclaimed Victory in Europe Day. But what FDR's death means is that now Harry Truman is taking office just a few months after after FDR's term had started in January of 1945, and he has not been completely briefed on all aspects of the war yet. He's taking control as Germany is faltering, and within just a few weeks of Truman taking office, Germany is out of the picture. And so Italy's gone, Germany's gone, that leaves Japan left. And that's where we're going to leave off on chapter 35, section 7. We'll focus specifically on the war in the Pacific with next week's lessons.